Give me 100 men who fear nothing but sin and desire nothing but God. And I care not whether they be clergymen or laymen. They alone will shake the gates of hell and set up the kingdom of heaven upon the earth. Good morning, missionaries. So, today we are going to talk about dirt. So the title of this class is Cultivating a Heart for Missions. As part of cultivating is preparing the soil. So at our little farm, we have a little garden. And the most important part of the garden is the soil. The most expensive part of the garden is the soil. The most laborious part is the soil. And as I was laying this class and this lesson before the Lord, He brought me back to that. So let's evaluate the soil of your heart. That's what we're going to do today. So let me tell you about soil evaluation. So before you build or plant, you have to have an evaluation of the soil. You have to pull it out of the ground and have it tested. So success in the garden starts with soil. It's more important than water. It's more important than light. The soil determines whether the plants live or die. But it's the same with your heart. So today we're going to evaluate our hearts. What does soil need? Like, what makes it important? So when you think about what you're going to plant in the garden, you want nutrients because those plants, those seeds need to eat and be nourished. So you have to have nutrients. The thing is, whatever you put in the soil is what you're going to put out of it. So I want to take just so thirsty. Clean water. So I have a question for you. As we consider our hearts, as ministers, the only thing that we can give out is what we have in, what we have put in. So whatever goes in also comes out. And I know, especially here at CFNI, sometimes the standards feel so high and very specific. But the truth is, it's good ministry training. And I want to challenge you today about something. So just like I'm enjoying nice, clean, clear drinking water, if I were to serve this to you, it would be lovely. You would be refreshed. But if in my own heart, in my own life, I struggle with just nothing big, I don't kill anybody, but just a little bit, just a little bit of sin. Sometimes maybe the movies we watch aren't exactly what, but but it was just a little bit, right? It's how our lives look. As ministers, whatever you're putting into your cup in your heart is the only thing that you can give out. So as you consider the people that God is putting before you to minister to, we must be so diligent to guard our hearts, to guard against the small sins. We all know about all of the big ones, but the little ones make it dirty too. And then when it comes time to serve from what you have to them, nobody wants to drink this. This isn't clean. It isn't refreshing. But if that's what you're putting in, it's all you have. So let's go to Proverbs chapter 4, verse 23. Proverbs 4:23. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it springs the issues of life." For the word to say keep with all diligence, that's the highest of standards. And so really today we're going to talk about soil in your heart, but in the next few classes after this, we're going to talk about what does this mean? Like, what does this practically mean as a minister to keep your heart with all diligence? For out of it springs the issues of life. So this is how we test soil. So we go into the garden, and you have to dig past the surface. Now, we have already dug for the soil, and we have already done a lot of this just preparing the way for you. So we dug for the soil, and then we filled the jar with water. So then we stood and we shook it for 3 minutes, okay? And then you have to let it soak and sit. Now, here's the kicker with this. After 1 minute, we're going to see what it does. And I have a timer, So in 1 minute, we're going to reevaluate this jar. But I love the comparison of this because the soaking, so after 1 minute, the amount of sediment that's at the bottom is the sand content of the soil. And when we make the parallel between the soil and our hearts, a soil that's high in sand, it drains well. So stuff rolls off of it. I mean, don't you want stuff to roll off? I do. So in 1 minute, actually about 20 seconds now, I'm going to hold the jar up and we're going to see what has filtered through the bottom, okay? And that's our sand content. But then if we wait 4 more minutes and then we measure again the sediment, the difference between the two is the silt of the soil. So silt makes it harder to saturate, but it helps it hold the moisture too. And why am I teaching you about soil? Because I want to challenge you. After you're shaken really good, what does your life look like after 1 minute? What does your attitude look like after 1 minute? Okay, so it's been a minute, and this actually looks like there's not very much sand in it at all. I don't know if you can see the separation, but there's a little separation here, and then a lot of silt here. So whatever we decided to dig out of the ground just didn't have very much sand in it. But that's why we measure, and that's why we evaluate. So back to my question. After the world shakes you, after circumstances shake you, what does your heart look like after about 1 minute? What are your initial feelings and reactions? Because you're going to get shaken. We all get shaken. What is the first thing that pops out of the top? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it rage? What does that look like for you? So as you evaluate yourself, I want you to think about the last time that you got shaken real good. Circumstances weren't in your favor. It could be something minor, it could be something major, but what did that look like for you? And then after a few minutes, how did your heart change towards that? Because there's a settling that happens. I know for me, I have always my whole life, I grew up in a home where my father was an alcoholic, and there was just lots of angry rages. And so that's what I learned. I learned to do that. And so as Adam and I got married and as we started having children, I saw those things come out when I got shaken. So my immediate reaction to things was to get angry immediately. And after years, I started realizing, one, I don't want that for my children. I don't want that for my home. And so after all of these years, I can comfortably say that I can wait the 24 hours because that's the third evaluation for soil. The first evaluation is about 1 minute. The second is about 4 minutes. But then the third, the final settling, is about 24 hours. And so in our personal life, Adam and I, as a married couple, but also as ministers, when we hear hard news or bad news or shaking news, we have learned to not react and let it sit about 24 hours because things have time to settle and to sort themselves. So let's open our Bibles back to Psalms 26:2. So we're going to go to Psalms chapter 26, verse 2. It says, "Examine me, O Lord, and prove me. Try my mind and my heart." Let that be your prayer today. Get before the Lord and ask Him, try my mind, try my heart. Shake it and see what comes to the top. Shake it and see what settles to the bottom. Because there needs to be a mixture. So as we're talking about garden soil and as we're talking about your heart, I loved some of the correlations. So if we took this dirt and we poured about a half a cup of vinegar on it, if it fizzes, that means it's alkaline soil. And when we're planting, we call that sweet soil. But if we took and put baking soda on top of it and it fizzes, as gardeners, we call that sour soil. But then if there's no reaction, it's neutral soil. And I know this is a lot about dirt, but I think it matters in our hearts because alkaline soil, so the sweet soil, is actually lacking in iron. It can't absorb anything. It doesn't absorb energy. So as the sun comes down and as you pour nutrients on it, it can't absorb it. And there's only one reason that that happens. It hasn't been exposed to rain or storms. So as you go through your life, we are so good at self-preservation. We're high. Self-preservation is high. We want to avoid the hard and avoid the struggle. But the truth is, in the avoidance of hard and struggle, we become weak. We become weak because there's no iron built up in us. There's no strength inside of us. And with alkaline soil, if I were to plant my seeds in alkaline soil, the seeds would turn yellow and they would be weak and they wouldn't get very tall because there's not enough sustaining in it. It causes stunted growth. I bet you can think of a few people in your life, believers, that you look left and right, and there's just stunted growth. They tend to want to hide from hard and just avoid the struggles. You can't grow that way. You can't grow that way. But then if we had our soil and we poured the baking soda on it and it fizzed, this soil is acidic. So that means that when you put a seed in it, it's going to grow so fast, but it doesn't root deep. And when you examine it, acidic soil, it lacks sulfur. So sulfur and brimstone and volcanic rock. So it lacks the heaviness in the soil. It lacks the foundational teachings. So absolutely, you plant that seed in there and it's going to grow up quick, but there's no roots involved. How often we see believers come into the church and they're so excited, but their faith is an inch deep and a mile wide because there's been no brimstone, there's been no hard things. And all of this goes back to examining your heart. What hard things are you leaning into as a believer? What are you shying away from? Because it is in the hard things that we grow. So after all of this, one of the things that we can do is something called liming the soil. You didn't know you were going to get a farming class today, did you? We won't charge extra. So liming the soil is actually where you pour calcium on top of it. But calcium causes it to be tested and burned down. And in the testing and in the burning, the nutrients absorb into the soil. And after the testing and after the burning and after the hard, then the soil is ready. It's ready for whatever's been planted or going to be planted in it. That means that the seeds that grow will grow slowly at the appropriate rate that the roots will grow, that it'll grow up tall and sturdy and green and produce. So I want to speak that to you today, that think back to some of the latest trials in your life. Imagine that the Lord permitted those things to grow you. Imagine that the Lord was liming your heart a bit, that there were calcium and nutrient deposits in it. Because this whole class is about cultivating the heart of a missionary for missions. And as a missionary, your heart, it's all you can give from. It's all you can give from. So as we move into some very practical things to do and remember in ministry, I want to encourage you and remind you to lean into the hard, to get before the Lord and ask Him, examine my mind, examine my heart. Tell me if there's anything in it that's not clean. Whatever you have inside as a minister is what you give out. We love you. God bless you. And you are God's best.